buddy of mine took this picture from his cockpit of his airplane as we were flying over Miami. But boy, it's been a hell of a week. That AOC Squad and her big mouth and her radical, communist, Marxist attitude. She's a terrorist is what the fuck she is. AOC and her squad. Yeah, a frickin' terrorist. That's exactly what they are. They're communist, Marxist terrorists. That's exactly what they are. And the entire Democratic Party goes along with them. These young scumbag millennials that have managed to get themselves elected by lying to the people in their district. Look at them. They're all communist scumbag bastards. Every damn one of them in that so-called squad. Every word that comes out of their mouth is racist. And I'd like to remind you, the squad, that those who go around calling others racist, meaning you are the racists. Every damn one of you. Because that's the only leg you got to stand on, is calling everybody else racist, like that's supposed to make them feel bad. You are the racist, the squad, the AOC squad. You are the pathetic, scumbag racist. Skanks at that. Let's get that clear right now. But I put this video together because I want to show you what the Democratic, Communist, Marxist, liberal, terrorist regime, they're not a party, they're a radical regime. I want to show you what they're not going to show you and what CNN and MSNBC is not going to show you. So stay tuned to this video because it's fixing to get good. This is one of those videos you're going to love to watch and show everybody else. I'm going to show you some shit that they're not willing to talk about that's made the news in the last 3 to 5 years. I'm going to start with the most recent one in Nevada, where an illegal alien murdered 4 elderly people in western Nevada. Yeah, an illegal alien murdered 4 elderly people in western Nevada in January of 2019. We'll start there and work our way backwards. Let's get on with the show.
Nevada police say that the man who murdered 4 people is in the country illegally. 19-year-old Wilbur Martinez Guzman was arrested Saturday in Carson City. He's being held on burglary and immigration charges. Police say that he will soon be charged with murder in connection to 4 shooting deaths in Reno and Gardnerville. Most of the victims are above the age of 50. The story even gaining some attention with the president, who in a tweet used it to point to the importance of building a border wall.
Set a $500,000 bail for the 19-year-old immigrant accused of killing multiple people in northern Nevada.
Wilbur Martinez Guzman was arraigned in Carson City yesterday for illegally possessing guns and selling stolen items. The murder charges haven't come down yet, but police say that they tied him to the killings after he tried pawning items that he stole from the victims. This morning, that pawn shop owner is speaking out.
He just came in and he was selling us items, nothing that would really stand out as out of the ordinary or alert us, but by taking the identification, reporting it to the sheriff's office every day, they were able to figure out and tie this case together.
The owner of the pawn shop says it's standard for him to give a list of customers to the sheriff's department. Isn't that interesting and helpful? Guzman is back in court next month.
Sure, how this happened.
As of today, we are now officially moving forward in our prosecution of Wilbur Ernesto Martinez Guzman. I will be personally prosecuting this case on behalf of Washoe County with a steadfast purpose to bring justice to his victims and their family members. His conviction is our highest priority. The complaint alleges 4 counts of murder with the use of a deadly weapon and 5 counts of burglary. 4 of the burglary counts allege that the defendant either gained possession of a firearm or had possession of a firearm during each of those 4 burglaries. What someone's status may be in the country has nothing to do with how we're proceeding on this case. We are looking to hold an alleged murderer accountable for the murders he committed.
An illegal alien about 3 doors down from where he lives went in and execution style shot 2 elderly people in the head, an 81 and an 80-year-old person. I think Jerry and Sherry David were their names. And apparently he did this 2 other times earlier in the week. What's going on and why is the media not talking about this?
Well, as you know, Dave, I live in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I'm on the radio here in Southern Nevada quite a bit. And today actually was my first day to premiere my own show in Northern Nevada, and that's where these killings took place. And so since last week, when this murder spree started, it started last Thursday, I believe, January 9th or 10th. That's when the first killing took place, and her name was Connie Kuntz. She was found shot to death in her home. She took care of her elderly mother who was disabled and deaf. And so her mother had discovered her when her mother woke up in the morning. This following day, an illegal 19-year-old illegal alien again went on a murder spree, shot another woman, execution style, 71 or 74-year-old Sophia Rankin was found dead in her home with a bullet to the head. And then just a few days later, on January 16th, this illegal alien, 19-year-old suspect who is now in custody in Washoe County in Carson City, he took the 2 lives of an elderly couple, very popular, well-known couple. The husband was head of the Reno Rodeo, president of the Reno Rodeo for years. And prior to that, they simply had 1 murder. So to have 4 murders in a short time period of just 4 days really rocked the Northern Nevada, but it's rocked this state because, again, we have another story that an illegal alien who had no right to be here, who broke our laws when he illegally entered our country. He is from El Salvador, 19-year-old boy, went on a murdering rampage as well as burglarizing these homes. And according to the sheriffs, the property that was found on him, and perhaps even at a pawn shop, and also the electronic equipment that he stole, led to his arrest. And, you know, here's kind of how the fraud works, Dave. As you and I both know, I'm a former Californian. I escaped to Nevada. They first say, well, we must give driver's licenses to illegal aliens. Well, why? First of all, it's a privilege to drive, and secondly, it's a privilege to be an American.
Right.
It's already broken our laws. They have no respect for our laws. So the Democrats always say, well, you know, because of insurance costs, you know, we want to make sure they're insured. Oh, yeah, right. So now they've gotten into the DMV system, right, as illegal aliens. Well, then the second step to that fraud, of course, then comes along the lines of, well, now we're just going to have automatic voter registration at the DMV. And that's exactly what Nevada just did. We gave driver's licenses to illegal aliens, and then a ballot initiative called Question 5 here just passed in November, doing automatic registration at the DMV, and no one's told me, even the Secretary of State, how they're going to differentiate a legal citizen and a legal alien from an American citizen.
And this is being done now at the state level. It's pushed through by legislatures, automatically getting registered to vote. And I mean, I want to talk more about this after the break coming up here in just a couple of minutes. But what I'm concerned about, and I'm seeing this not just in California, but we're seeing this in other states like Washington and Oregon as well, all along the left coast here. It's migrating eastward, and I call it like a primordial ooze, like a primordial Marxist ooze. So I mean, this is really concerning to me because we're seeing a change not just in the demographics, but also who is being, you know, essentially being allowed to vote. And we know why. And I want to discuss it after the break. We know where this power shift is coming from.
Sort of control, it seems, when it comes to our borders. First, the wall wouldn't work. Then the wall was immoral. Now there's not enough money for the wall. Well, that's a really interesting argument, no matter which platform or argument you want to take, is because the last one, walls don't work. Then why did we fund walls? Why did they sign an omnibus bill funding walls in Tunisia? Why did the Democrats use taxpayer money to fund walls in Jordan? The Democrats have no problem funding walls all over the world, so that tells me, hell, they must work. But if the wall really doesn't work, or if the wall is immoral, so we know we have money, okay? We have plenty of money. The Democrats can always find money for their pet projects. When you look at, for example, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's talking about tens of trillions of dollars when it comes to her new, better green plan. And then, of course, you have other Marxist Democrats talking about their new, better deal. I guess, the lowest unemployment rate since 1960 isn't a great deal, so they're going to make it better by spending tens of trillion dollars on, spending to try to get jobs. So they can find money for their pet projects, their social justice initiatives, and their climate change initiatives. They simply can't find money for the wall. So if the wall, is immoral, so we know we have money. If the wall is immoral, then why doesn't Nancy take a few of her illegal alien bros or amigos and go down to San Diego and tear down the wall between San Diego and Tijuana? That wall works really well, according to the Tijuana mayor and according to the San Diego mayor and any other Democrat you really ask. They don't have an excuse as to why they aren't tearing down the walls and building walls abroad.
So how many of you knew about that one up there in western Nevada that took place in January 19? Illegal alien murdering 4 elderly people. Well, here's another one that you all need to see that happened in 2019, I believe. Wait until you see this one. There's more to come, so stay tuned to the video.
Tonight, when President Trump took his case for the border wall to the American people last night, a brutal metro Atlanta murder got national attention. The president blamed illegal immigration for drug trafficking and crime, including a horrific murder in Clayton County.
In Georgia, an illegal alien was recently charged with murder for killing, beheading, and dismembering his neighbor.
Tonight, we want to take a closer look at that murder case. In November, police say Christian Ponce Martinez killed, beheaded, and dismembered his neighbor, a 76-year-old grandfather. Ponce Martinez now faces charges of malice murder. Fox 5's Doug Evans has more on the story.
Christian Ponce Martinez remains locked up in the Clayton County jail charged with murder. He also has a hold placed on him by ICE because he's in the country illegally. The Clayton County DA told me today that it's been difficult to pin down his immigration status. That's because they still have not determined whether he entered the country illegally or was here on an expired green card. But at the time of the murder in November, Clayton County police said he had just moved to Clayton County from Mexico. It was early November last year when police discovered the dismembered body of 77-year-old Robert Page. His family had reported him missing. Police followed a blood trail next door after neighbor Christian Ponce Martinez was discovered hiding outside and acting suspicious. The trail led police to the gruesome discovery. Page's body had been cut up, his head severed from his body.
But now, like my sister, I'm scared for her to walk home from school, stuff like that happening,
Neighbor Isaiah Went heard that President Trump had used this case as argument to build a border wall.
He has good reasoning, him building a wall is not really a bad thing, you know what I'm saying? I feel like if you want to come into this country, you come get it the right way.
In the neighborhood now, it was difficult to tell whether the Page family continued to live at this home on Fieldcrest Drive. A large dumpster now resides in the driveway. Mr. Page's body was found in the backyard of the home next door. At the time of the murder, friends and family had gathered at his home next door to console his widow, Lulu Page.
We just ask that, everyone support Mrs. Page through this time of grief for her.
Ponce Martinez has withdrawn a request for bond and has asked for a psychological evaluation. By having that detainer placed on him by ICE, that means that if he's convicted or even if he's let go, he will eventually be turned over to U.S. authorities.
Well, what'd you think of that one? Murdered and beheaded and cut up his neighbor here illegally. Can you believe this shit? And why isn't the liberal media talking about this? Why aren't they bringing any of this out? Because the liberal media and the terrorist, communist, Marxist Democrats don't want you to know about it. They figure if you don't know about it, that'll give them more ammunition for their open border bullshit. They figure if they keep you in the dark, keep you stupid and naive, then they can get by with this invasion of America by radical, communist, murderous terrorists. That's what the Democratic, liberal, communist, Marxist want. To invade and infiltrate and invade this country and turn it into a third world shithole. That's exactly what the Democratic liberals want. That includes Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, AOC, her chief of staff, that M.R. Oman, or whatever her name is, and the rest of that squad. Every one of these Democratic liberals are hell-bent on turning the United States of America into a third world violent shithole. Why? Well, then they can raise taxes and take more of your money from your paychecks and your savings accounts to pay for supposed more police. The only problem is that will never happen because the Democratic, communist, Marxist, terrorist liberals are tying the hands of the police from being able to work with ICE and Customs and Border Patrol officials from deporting these criminals. But they're going to raise your taxes to steal more of your money so that you are broke and you lose your homes and you end up homeless. That is the main goal. Create total chaos. But many of you are too naive, too ignorant, and too stupid to realize it. And even if it was painted or presented to you factually, you would not believe it because it's unconscionable. It's inconceivable that they would do something like this. You would not believe it. You would think it was hogwash, bullshit. Well, you tell that to the families of the 4 people murdered in Nevada. You tell that to that family of that black man down there in Atlanta who had his head cut off and was chopped up into pieces. You tell that to them. See if they'll buy your naive, ignorant, clueless bullshit. Here's some more you need to see from illegal murderers here in the United States that have killed and murdered American citizens here illegally. Let's watch the video.
A community ravaged by the lack of action on the part of our government and local government, state government, who just turned their backs on them. What are we talking about? Visalia, California. It sits between L.A. and San Francisco. And in that town, over the course of 2 harrowing days earlier this week, Gustavo Garcia, he's a man twice removed from this country, went on what authorities call a reign of terror. It's a 24-hour shooting spree, killing at least 2 and injuring many more.
Deputies taking gunfire from this man, 36-year-old Gustavo Garcia. It all went down on Road 140 and Avenue 256 early Monday morning. You can hear the officer reloading his gun as bullets ring out.
Now, while the circumstances of this are tragic on their own, the run-up to it is even more so. 2 days before this reign of terror, he was arrested by the Tulare County Sheriff's deputies for being under the influence of a controlled substance. He was held in the county jail for about 10 hours before being released, even though ICE officials had issued an immigration hold on him. You see, this arrest wasn't Garcia's first brush with the law. He has a violent criminal past.
Immigration and Customs Enforcement tells Fox 26 News Garcia had been deported twice. In the past, the sheriff's office could have alerted immigration because of Garcia's extensive rap sheet, which includes armed robbery more than 15 years ago.
Now, you might be asking yourself, why did the cops let him go despite the ICE hold, especially given his past? So was it the police's fault?
ICE did file a detainer as soon as it learned of Garcia's arrest Friday. And this would be enough to keep him in custody in other states. But Sheriff Boudreaux says his office no longer recognizes those detainers, and it can't reach out to ICE for misdemeanor crimes.
Tulare County Sheriff Mike Boudreaux said, before SB 54, which is the sanctuary state bill, Gustavo Garcia would have been turned over to ICE officials. That's how we've always done it. After SB 54, though, we no longer have the power to do that. We should note the Tulare County Board of Supervisors voted to adopt a resolution opposing California's sanctuary state law in May of this year. And even though it's kind of symbolic, it does show a citizenry standing up for common sense. Joining me now is Tulare County Sheriff Mike Boudreau. Sheriff, I know our viewers across the country are watching this and they're shaking their heads going, how can this happen in the United States of America, where we emote morning, noon, and night about the tragic circumstances of people who are trying to come into the country? And I get it, they're tragic circumstances. It's tough. But yet the politicians, did you get a call from Pelosi? Did you get a call from, from Gavin Newsom? Any other, officials in California concerned about what's happening there?
The only phone call that I got was from the ACLU demonizing the actions that we took, which is really unfortunate. Tulare County is how it's pronounced, actually, but in Tulare County, that's fine. We're an agricultural community. We produce multi-billion dollars worth of agriculture that's sent all over the world. And we have a large undocumented community. But we also have a large group of people who don't commit these types of crimes on a daily basis. I think what our focus is on is the criminal element that ends up in my jail, that I no longer have the tools to reach out to ICE, my counterpart, my law enforcement partners, and I'm no longer able to recognize the detainer through the sanctuary state law, as well as the Ninth Court Circuit indicating that the detainers don't meet due process. So because of those two combined efforts, we no longer can telephone ICE and even ask the question, why is this detainer placed, nor can we recognize the detainer itself. And I think that I need to make myself very clear.
Sheriff, hold on. Can you give a heads up to ICE? Can you give them a heads up? Can you give them a heads up? Can you call and say, we're about to release this individual, or we have this individual in custody, even if they can't come and interview him or examine him? Is there any notification at all you could give to ICE?
We're not allowed to talk to our counterparts under these laws.
Where's the conservative lawsuit against this? This is just an outrage. Hold on, I got to play something for you, Sheriff. This was Nancy Pelosi's claim about what sanctuary policies actually accomplish. Watch.
Our city of San Francisco is a sanctuary city, and we see it as a place where it makes us safer. It makes us safer because people can go to school, they can get driver's license, they can be witnesses against other violence that they see in the community.
Is your community feeling safer tonight?
They're not feeling safer. But I will say that we're not against our undocumented community. We're not against immigrants. We're not against Dreamers or DACA. And I think that it needs to be very clear, our community as a whole, even our undocumented community. I sat with a large group of people, and they're not afraid of their law enforcement. They're not even afraid of being deported.
So that's a lie, Sheriff. That argument that I hear parroted to me morning, noon, and night, every time we deal with one of these sanctuary policy cases. We did this in New Jersey a couple of weeks ago. The advocate that came on said, oh, no, we're not going to have immigrants cooperating with authorities. They're not going to show up and testify in cases. That's just bunk. But this is the parroted line. So you don't see that at all in your community?
That's not true. We don't see that. We see our community reaching out to us. What they're afraid of is that the criminal will return to their community because we can't report them to ICE.
Yeah, and commit domestic violence, rape, burglary, robbery, other offenses against property and people. Sheriff, thank you for the heads up and for speaking out on what we are going to be following all throughout the next year, because so many people won't do it.
Well, what did you think of that one? Huh? Why isn't the Democrats, the Democratic Communist Marxist liberals, talking about any of this? All AOC and her gang, communist gang, terrorist squad, wants to talk about is how the illegals are having to drink out of toilets, which has already been proven bogus. These Democrats are terrorists to the United States. Terrorists. And they all need to be gone after. And I don't care how it's done. Stay tuned, because there's more to come. Here's the next video. Watch this.
And there certainly can be a softening, because we're not looking to hurt people. We want people. We have some great people in this country. We have some great people in this country. So, but we're going to follow the laws of this country. And we have, what people don't realize, we have very very strong laws.
Okay, Donald Trump further defining his stance on immigration. I want to bring in Sabina Durden. Her son Dominic was killed by an illegal immigrant. Sabina, I know this is painful for you, but I do thank you very much for coming on the program. The status of illegals is very important in the political discussion at the moment. I want you please to tell us your story. What happened to your son?
Good morning, Stuart. I really appreciate you having me on again. Dominic was 30 years old. We called him German chocolate because of his heritage, and he worked for the 911 Sheriff's Department Dispatch Center in Riverside. He was on his way to work early in the morning on July 12, 2012, when an illegal alien without a license, without insurance or anything, with a prior felony and 2 DUIs, turned in front of him, hit him so hard that it killed him instantly and threw him into a wall. And he died a mile away from our home where he and I lived for 10 years, sharing the house, best friends. The guy received a misdemeanor without gross negligence, 9 months, 5 years probation, and he served 35 days in jail.
I'm sorry to put you through this, Sabina. It's obviously
painful. It's okay. I appreciate you giving him a voice.
Yeah, I want to give you a voice. I want you to be speaking to America to what happened to you. Now, yes. We just heard Donald Trump slightly amend his position on what to do with illegals. He was saying round them all up and take them all away. Now he's saying jump through a few hoops, pay taxes, this, that, and the other, and you can stay. I can tell you don't approve of that. Tell us.
No, I believe in Donald Trump 100%. I know he will protect us. I know he will be the best president for us. And his stance on immigration hasn't changed. I believe it's the media just spinning it a little bit here and there. He hasn't softened anything. He shares his thoughts. He talks about it. And I still believe, like he said, he will honor the laws that we have on the books. Okay. He will implement those laws. But right now he's talking, and I love him for keeping the illegal immigration issue in the front of the news, and I love him for that.
One last question, Sabina, if I may. The illegal in the accident who killed your son, is he still in America?
It took us a year and a half to get him deported, and he has family in Riverside, and I'm 98% sure he's right back where he was. And I have a sad, sad feeling in my gut that I will see his face on the news again when he kills somebody else.
Oh. Sabina Durden, we do appreciate you being with us. I do know it's painful. We feel for you, and thank you very much for sharing it with us today. Thank you.
Unbelievable, isn't it? Just unbelievable and pathetic. But we ain't done, because I got more. Let's watch this next clip.
You start asking questions. Well, who, what, and how? And so then you know, the information started trickling in. Okay, it was an illegal alien. Okay, what about the illegal alien? Well, we know that he's been deported some.
Reyes, a native of Reynosa, Mexico, just across the border from McAllen, had a criminal record listing burglaries and assaults dating back to at least 2002. He had been removed from the country 4 times, but every time he re-entered. Reyes faced up to 20 years in federal prison in 2005 after he beat up an inmate when he was already behind bars for his 4th illegal re-entry. But the U.S. attorney offered him a deal. In exchange for accepting responsibility, Reyes served just 5 years and was deported upon completing his sentence in 2010. He would illegally re-enter a 5th time. A U.S. Justice Department spokeswoman said such plea deals are made to ensure convictions are secured without undergoing costly trials. But Dan Golbach said the system needs major change.
This idea that there's any kind of border is a joke. I turned right back around and moseyed on up to the sanctuary city of Houston, and he was open for business.
For a number of years, critics said Houston was a sanctuary for undocumented immigrants because, for one, Houston police were forbidden to ask a person's citizenship status. And the city did not have a good working relationship with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, detaining what they call criminal aliens in the jail.
So please push this bill forward so we can start enforcing the laws that are already on the books.
Weeks after burying his son, Govach testified during the 2015 Texas legislative session for a bill that would have required local authorities to cooperate with federal immigration agencies. But the legislation stalled. Opponents of such policies argued that strict immigration enforcement at the local level would result in undocumented immigrants arrested for minor crimes getting deported, breaking up families.
When they talk about compassion, splitting up families, well, you know what? I'd rather have Spencer in another country that I can go visit him, because I can't visit him where he is right now. We did the cleanup ourselves.
Spencer's mother, Julie Govach, has spent the past year seeking answers to basic questions from Houston police, the Harris County Sheriff's Office, and federal immigration authorities. With so many jurisdictions involved, the victims from that night say they feel as though the information has been a hot potato, with each agency often referring them elsewhere.
It was almost like it was top secret information, you know.
John Weston was another victim that night, shot in the jaw at a nearby intersection minutes after Reyes killed Govach. A year later, a Harris County grand jury declined to proceed with any further action related to the case. Details about the case are starting to trickle out, but there is much Weston and the other victims' families still don't know, like where Reyes lived or worked, where he got the pistol he used, or a definitive motive. Federal authorities who apply privacy protections to undocumented immigrants have yet to release his detailed immigration history, while Harris County and Houston police have cited ongoing investigations for withholding criminal records in the case, information Julie and Dan Govach say would start to answer how Reyes remained here illegally.
And by virtue of illegally, it means he's not really supposed to be here. So yes, if he was not in this country, then he would have not been here to shoot my son.
His mom does this stuff.
The pair visits Spencer's gravesite often, where they choose to focus on all of the good he did during his short life, instead of the circumstances that took him away.
He developed a passion for music, and that was what made our bond between me and him so strong. And I can tell you that, I was always his dad first, but he was also, bar none, he was my best friend.
In Houston, this is Alana Rocha reporting for the Texas Tribune.
Now you sit there and tell me the United States of America is not under attack by these democratic, communist, socialist, Marxist liberals. And they know it. They know what they're doing. And they're trying to fool you, the American people. They're lying to you. They're using these illegals from other countries to try to invade America and start a civil war and murder Americans and policemen on purpose. That's why they're hindering the local police departments from working with ICE. They want an all-out civil war, these Democratic liberals do, and they're going to lie about it. They're not going to come out and admit it. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, AOC and her squad, along with all the other Democrats. And this is what people need to wake up to, because sooner or later, you the one watching this video, are going to lose a loved one to one of these illegal aliens. Whether it be a car accident, because they were here illegally drunk and on drugs, or because they were involved in a shooting or a robbery. They're going to be targeted. You're going to lose your mother, your father, your son, your daughter, your niece, your nephew, your cousin. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. The more of you sit on your asses, bury your heads in the sand, and act like this isn't happening. That's why I'm showing you this video, these clips, because it's happening more widespread than what the liberal news media is reporting, like CNN, MSNBC, ABC News, The View, NPR Radio. They're lying. They are lying to you to fool you. We are being invaded. This is a war.
Jose Tovilla Lopez has a sordid story that includes a prior deportation and identity fraud, in addition to the sexual assault of a friend's teenage daughter. Local 12's Joe Webb has that story.
Jose Tovilla Lopez came to court this morning with a lot hanging over his head. The first order of business, through an interpreter, a guilty plea to rape for reportedly getting a friend's 15-year-old daughter drunk and assaulting her after she passed out.
He forcibly raped a teenage girl.
And then when she tried to fight back, she left actual physical scratch marks on his face and his throat. And that ultimately he did leave and then fled the scene.
Which was the victim's family home, where he was an invited guest. Tovia Lopez agreed to an 8-year sentence. The prosecution says he's from Mexico and is in the United States illegally. Judge Haddad told Tovia Lopez that he faces deportation after serving his sentence, and it would not be the first time.
He had been deported in the past. He returned, and he was using a 69-year-old woman in Arkansas's Social Security number to obtain employment.
The immigration and identity fraud allegations have been shared with federal authorities.
The victim's mother spoke at the sentencing. She says the girl is devastated and the family has had to move because of threats from Jose Tovia Lopez's friends.
We are not identifying the mother, who wanted to be heard. She plans to lobby for harsher sentences for rape and tighter immigration laws.
Yes, that's always a concern, that in 10 years, is he going to try to cross back over? Yes, that's why we need stronger borders. That's why we have to work with ICE and Homeland Security to protect our borders, not only to protect us, but to protect our children.
Jose Tovia Lopez faces 5 years probation after serving the 8 years and a lifetime sex offender registration. All that could be moot if he is once again sent back home. In Batavia, Joe Webb, Local 12 News.
None of these Democrats in Washington or in your state, your county, or your city should ever be elected into a public office again. Ever. And the ones that are out there, the Democratic communist liberals, who are trying to keep the police from working with ICE, that includes mayors and city councilmen, county officials, county commissioners, any sheriffs and police chiefs who don't want to work with ICE, they need to be arrested. If we have to enlist the United States Marshals, the U.S. Secret Service, and the FBI and the U.S. military to go after these officials in these cities and counties and states and arrest them and not let them post bond, but to serve on a trial, especially those who've had ones murdered by these illegals, to serve on a jury. They need to be held, convicted, and sentenced to 45 years or more in prison. Hard labor. No debate, no excuses, and it's non-negotiable. They need to serve 45 plus years in prison for what they're trying to do to this country, the states and the cities in this country. Every damn one of them.
Well, even if a foreign-born person is in this country legally, they can be deported if they break the law.
Yeah, but there's one law that they're allowed to break multiple times and then still stay here. It's drunk driving.
Well, Fox 5 I-Team reporter Randy Travis is here now with some surprising numbers for us. Randy?
Yeah, Rosenstein, this really jumped out at us as we analyzed thousands of jail records involving immigrants busted in Gwinnett and Cobb counties. People who are only deported after their third DUI.
What do you have? Severe single 30 driver was passed out of the red light. He is all over the road. If we don't get him stopped, he's going to kill somebody.
Luckily, Jose Lado Rostro did not kill anyone on this crazy night in Lilburn.
Signal 41, signal 41.
He crashed into a ditch and was carried away on a stretcher. Last August, the Mexican-born legal resident would plead guilty to his third DUI. Only then could he be deported.
And it shouldn't be here. I mean, the reality is, if you've been convicted more than once for DUI, you should be gone.
That's already the rule for immigrants here illegally. One DUI conviction and you can be deported. But for someone here legally, like on a work permit or a green card, they cannot be kicked out unless they commit a felony. And that takes 3 DUIs.
The dangers of drunk driving I think, are underestimated in a lot of the immigrant populations.
Our analysis of immigrant arrests in Cobb and Gwinnett counties found lots of multiple DUI offenders. Adan Aredamata pled guilty in 2009, 2012, and 2013 in Gwinnett County. Fat Nulam, guilty in 2009, 2012, and in Duluth in 2015. Jose Chavez, guilty in 2014, 2015, and later tested positive for cocaine. Because immigration records are often private and public records for these cases contain limited information, it's impossible to know whether these men were here legally or were eventually deported yet came back to drive drunk again.
If you're a guest in our country, why would you give somebody more than one chance at killing somebody?
Drunk driving may be considered only a misdemeanor, not a top priority when it comes to deportation, but it's one of those minor crimes that can lead to so much tragedy, like what happened on this Hart County road the day after Thanksgiving, 2014.
I was putting up some Christmas decoration, and I was trying to call her to see if she knew where it was, but she never answered.
Louise Cannon's daughter-in-law, Catherine, son Russell, and 5-year-old granddaughter, Rosemary, killed by a drunk driver as they headed to Hartwell to go Christmas tree shopping. Before they left home, someone had given the little girl $1 to spend.
And she died with that dollar in her hand, and that's what's the most heartbreaking thing.
The man who would plead guilty to vehicular homicide, Guatemalan native Marco Hernandez Ramirez, in this country illegally. He had even been deported once before, but came back. On this day, he would drink 24 beers before getting into a work van and weaving his way toward Franklin County. His blood alcohol level, 0.27, more than 3 times the legal limit.
DUI is a very serious offense because it turns our roadways into war zones. We are a nation of immigrants, certainly, but if we're not a nation of laws, then we have nothing but chaos.
But under this nation's current laws, if Ramirez had been a legal immigrant and driven drunk without killing someone, he could not be deported until he was caught 3 times. He got his wish, just not the address he wanted. Ramirez will now get to stay on U.S. soil for perhaps the next 40 years in prison.
He gave them the death sentence, and the rest of the family, we've got a life sentence because with the heartache we'll always have to live with.
The irony here is that Ms. Cannon does not want this drunk driver deported. She wants him to serve every day possible, fearing that if he were deported, he might not be incarcerated in Guatemala. So he's here illegally. He could be deported. He will be deported once he serves his time. But for legal immigrants, it takes 3 drunk driving convictions for them to be deported.
Would that be something Congress would have to change? Is that a state law? How
Absolutely.
does that work?
It's Congress, and in fact, that's the reason that they can't be deported right now, because back in the 90s, I believe, Congress did not include drunk driving as a deportable offense, only certain major felonies. So that could change if this Congress decides to change the law, update the law, do something with this law. And even, most immigration experts believe that's going to happen.
Yeah, well, most people, I'm sure, think that the way the law is currently written is concerning.
A lot of confusion going on there. Yeah.
Thanks, Randy.
Randy, thanks.
So when these Democratic liberal scumbags ran for public office, they ran on the ticket for the American citizens. But as you're seeing, they're not doing anything for the American citizens. They're more concerned and bending over backwards for the illegal criminals of different countries. You Democratic liberals need to wake up and pull your heads and remove it from your asses before it's done for you. You are evidently very, very stupid and ignorant. But until more of you Democratic liberals lose loved ones to these illegal aliens, these criminals, nothing's going to happen. Only then will your tune change after you've lost several of your family members to some of these criminal illegals. And you're going to stand around and wonder why. Well, it's because of your agendas, your personal beliefs. Until more of you Democratic liberals lose loved ones at the hands of these illegals that shouldn't not be in this country in the first place and who have broken the laws in the first place, then we'll hear your tune change. And you're going to stand around like a dipshit and wonder why your loved ones had to die. Well, just look at your agendas, your sick, twisted mentality. I think some of you Democratic liberals deserve to have your loved ones die, and you foot the funeral and burial expenses at your cost. Only then will we hear your tune change. When you have to foot the funeral and burial bill yourself when you can't afford it. Now this next story is very important because this just happened a couple of years ago and it did not make national headlines. It was kept quiet by the liberal news media, meaning CNN and MSNBC. They refused to do anything about it, or air it is what I should say. They're too busy harping on illegals being mistreated and drinking out of toilets. This was very seldom reported on. What you're about to see here is very, very disturbing. This is worse than the Kate Steinle San Francisco shooting, where the illegal shot that young girl on that pier. If you think that was bad, and I'd like the entire news media to pay attention to this part right here, because this is very important. What you're about to see and hear is 10 times more shocking than the Kate Steinle case, which made national headlines. What you're about to hear and see blows the doors off of that. And that's why I'm saving it for last. For those of you who are watching this video, you need to pay very close attention to this, along with all the other video clips I just showed you. This one's the most important one. I want you to turn up your speakers, show it to your friends, your family members, your co-workers, because this is important. You are not going to believe this. This happened in Kansas City, Kansas, about 2.5 years ago, 2 years ago. And this is going to happen to more people here, American citizens here in the United States, what you're going to see here. So get ready, pay attention, because here comes the news clips, back to back. Let's watch them.
Well, guys, this landlord has quite a connection to this story. First, she rented the home to the man now charged with 5 murders. 4 of those occurred at the house next door. She owns that home, too, and knows those victims quite well. So tonight, she is joining a growing list of people with questions about all of this. Come on in, she said. And just like that, we found ourselves inside the rented house of a man now charged with 5 murders.
I didn't know he was a killer.
For landlord Wendy Manthe, pain and confusion.
And I didn't think he would kill my boys.
Not only did she rent this house to Pablo Serrano Vitorino, she also owns the home next door. That house, the site of Monday night's massacre. She also knows the 4 victims killed there. What she didn't know, she says, was that her tenant was an illegal immigrant.
Apparently a lot of people didn't. A lot of people.
Vitorino was deported in 2004. Immigration and Customs Enforcement says he re-entered the U.S. illegally. Since, he's had multiple contacts with police. But in the latest case, ICE says it sent the immigration hold to the wrong police agency. Were you surprised he had multiple interactions with police as recently as last September, and yet he was still allowed to stay in this country?
Yeah, clearly this is somebody that should have not been in the United States, should have either been in jail or been sent back to another country, clearly, without a doubt.
A 5th victim, Randy Nordman, was killed Tuesday morning in Montgomery County. Tonight, his wife also touching on the immigration issue, saying in part, if this mistake had not been made and he was not allowed to remain in this country, would this tragedy have occurred? We want answers.
Until I ask Pablo to his face why, I probably won't have that. I have a lot of heartfelt for his family and everybody involved next door.
Now, speaking of Vitorino, he's actually in the hospital tonight after a suicide attempt in jail. Now, this landlord tells me, like so many people out here, she has no idea what the motive was for all these murders.
Back to that breaking news this morning. The manhunt for the suspect in a quadruple homicide in KCK is now over.
Police arrested 40-year-old Pablo Serrano Vitorino near I-70 and Route 19 in Montgomery County, Missouri, around 1:30 this morning. Serrano is charged in the deaths of 4 people at a KCK home on Monday night. He's also accused of killing another man in Missouri just yesterday. And we're finding out an error by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement may have led to Serrano's release from custody last year.
ICE placed a detainer on Serrano after he was arrested in September of last year, but sent that retainer to the wrong place. 41 Action News reporter Brian Abel is live at the initial crime scene. Brian, how did this happen?
Well, when Serrano was arrested in September, he was arrested and fingerprinted in Overland Park's municipal court. And that process prompted a flag for ICE, that immigration enforcement, to request a detainer to hold him for 48 hours. The problem is they sent that retainer notice to the wrong place. Now, in a statement provided to us by ICE, they say he was deported to Mexico in April of 2004. He came back at an unknown time. That is a felony. When he was arrested in September, ICE says they placed that detainer on him at the Johnson County Detention Center instead. Now, in a new statement, ICE says in part, further record checks indicate ICE erroneously issued the detainer to Johnson County Sheriff's Office instead, and ICE regrets the error. Now, not knowing he was wanted by immigration officials, Overland Park ended up releasing him. He would then, of course, go on to allegedly kill 4 people here at this home on 36th Street after moving in right next door.
A man charged with a killing spree that started in Kansas City and ended west of St. Louis is now dead. Tonight, police tell us they're investigating his death as a suicide. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kay Quinn.
And I'm Casey Nolan. Today, the widow of a man he was charged with killing says she has mixed feelings about the inmate's death. Marianne Martinez is live at the St. Louis City Justice Center, where the accused murderer was found dead. Marianne.
Casey, Pablo Serrano Vitorino was here illegally from Mexico. His trial got moved from Montgomery County here to St. Louis, and it was here in the jail where he was waiting for the trial.
Julie Nordman lost her husband Randy 3 years ago. In a statement, she says, "The details of that day are burned into my memory forever. Now that Pablo is gone, I have a sense of relief because we won't have to relive that horrific day in court. But I will also never get the opportunity to look him in the eyes and tell him what he has done to me and my family." Pablo Serrano Vitorino was accused of killing 4 men in Kansas City. He then drove 200 miles east and killed Randy Nordman in New Florence, Missouri, in Montgomery County. Serrano Vitorino was deported in April 2004, but later re-entered illegally. The killing sparked a national debate about how Serrano Vitorino was able to get back into the U.S. Julie Nordman testified before a congressional committee in 2017, saying immigration officials did not do their jobs.
I wish you could bring my husband back, but we all know that can't happen. What you can do is make sure that this doesn't happen to another innocent family in the future. Not only has ICE failed us, but our borders have failed us.
Out to Missouri and to the murder spree that left 5 people dead in 2 states. The suspect appearing in court today, prosecutors saying he was in the country illegally and should have been deported, that authorities knew he was here. ABC's Alex Perez tonight on the warning signs missed.
Tonight, Pablo Serrano Vitorino behind bars. Investigators revealing the Mexican national suspected in a murder spree that left 5 dead wasn't even supposed to be in the country. Authorities believe the suspect, an undocumented immigrant, gunned down his neighbor and 3 other men Monday night in Kansas City, Kansas. The suspect then fleeing, driving more than 170 miles to Montgomery County, Missouri. By Tuesday, his Dodge Ram pickup found abandoned. 20 minutes later, another man shot dead at his home 5 miles away. Choppers, canine units scouring the area until the suspect is finally cornered in a muddy ditch.
Confirming subject in custody.
Serrano Vitorino was deported to his native Mexico in 2004, but re-entered the country undetected. After a traffic violation and an arrest for domestic assault last year, ICE sought to have him detained, but local officials had already released him.
Something needs to be corrected so that the system works properly.
The suspect has been arraigned on murder charges here in Missouri and still faces charges in Kansas. The big question, a possible motive, remains a mystery.
As noted earlier in the video, the suspect that you just witnessed for the murders of those 5 people committed suicide while being held in jail. Just so you know. What we don't hear from the communist, democratic terrorist liberals like Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, AOC, and the rest of the Democratic scumbag liberals is how many of them are willing to pay for the funerals and burial expenses out of their own pockets for all these Americans, black or white, that have been murdered by these illegal criminal aliens that they want to let into this country. How much money are they willing to spend on funeral and burial expenses for this agenda that they're wanting to push of letting criminal illegals into the United States to push their communism civil war? If I was the victims' families, I would be contacting an attorney or a law firm, and I would personally, and I do mean personally, be filing multi-million-dollar lawsuits against Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, AOC, Gavin Newsom, every single one of these who are for open borders, letting these illegal criminals in. Each one, every single individual politician that's a Democratic liberal would be facing no less than $700 million lawsuits against them personally. And I do mean personally. I would not have any qualms about it. And I'm sure I can find enough lawyers and attorneys, when they see them kind of dollar signs, that kind of money, that they'd be more than willing to take up the case all the way to where it needs to go. Because this is what Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, AOC, and her squad need to face, are lawsuits, each individually, one, $700 million. That's just a start. I say we get it done. I say some lawyers and attorneys step up to the plate and help these victims of these murder victims out that's been murdered by illegal aliens in this country illegally. Sue these politicians, these Democratic, liberal, communist politicians, for $700 million.
Had this to say, quote, "We're taking a historic step to strengthen our justice system and protect the rights of the most vulnerable members of society. How we treat those in need, particularly young people who must appear in immigration proceedings, many of whom are fleeing violence, persecution, abuse, or trafficking, goes to the core of who we are as a nation." And that was Attorney General Eric Holder, the highest law enforcement official in the land. So let's just take a look at that first sentence for a moment. Having the American people pay for lawyers so that aliens can successfully break American law is not, Mr. Holder, a historic step to strengthen our judicial system. It's yet another attempt by you and your boss to destroy it systematically. Furthermore, we're not talking about the most vulnerable members of society because they're not in our society. They're not part of our society any more than Somali pirates or Afghan warlords are vulnerable members of society. Your cloaking of this endless brand of lawlessness in order to grow an unlimited crop of Democratic voters is simply another indication that you and the president and the progressive left would rather rule over ruins than share power in paradise. You're a miserable lot, and history cannot show you the door soon enough. For PJTV, I'm Bill Whittle.
And that statement that you just heard from Eric Holder under the Obama administration, when he was occupant of the White House, you heard what he said. You see, he's another son of a bitch and communist bastards that needs to be sued for $700 million, Eric Holder, along with Obama and the rest of the Democrats. But you watch them try to pass a law that they can't be held responsible or sued in a lawsuit. They'll try that shit next. Which is another reason they want to try to take away gun rights. Because if they won't be held liable and responsible in a court of law, then we have no other option but to go after them. And you know what I'm talking about. which is why they want to take away guns from Americans. That still won't stop us. We will get you. If we have to use a fucking machete, an axe, or a butcher knife. You're playing a very dangerous game, Democrats. You Democratic, communist, Marxist, socialist, liberals. You're playing a very dangerous game. And it's not going to come out good for you in the end. No matter how much security that you have or think you have. Because those protecting you are not going to save you. Because they'll be the first ones to get taken out. So that we, the American people, can get to you. You think about that, Democratic liberals. The game that you're playing, because that's what this is. This is a very dangerous game. And it's not a good game. It's causing the lives of hundreds of thousands of people to be ruined by your murderous callousness, by letting these illegal criminals across the border. We already have laws where they can apply to be a United States citizen. They just don't want to go through the process. They want to break the laws. Kind of like cutting in line at the movie theater ahead of everybody else. Or at the driver's license bureau to cut in line in front of everybody else. We all know why you're doing it. Because you want votes. So you can turn this country into a communist third world shithole. You Democratic liberals. And frankly, we're sick of it. And we're really sick and fed up of you young millennials who want to embrace communism and socialism as if it was a good thing and going to benefit you. Evidently, you do not know what communism and socialism really is. And that goes for you too, scumbag Bernie Sanders. Because that's exactly what you are. You're a lying scumbag right along with AOC and her chief of staff, that Sakardi Kabachi, whatever his name is. Yeah, her chief of staff. That scumbag, lowlife piece of shit. I'm not mincing any words because I'm at the point where I've had my belly full of all of you. And to be blunt about it, it's not safe for any of you to even come close to being around me. Anywhere I'm at in the country. You are terrorists. You're right up there with Osama bin Laden. Every one of you damn Democrats. And you socialists. Communist like Bernie Sanders. I'm going to say it again. You're right up there with Osama bin Laden. Every damn one of you. And I got no use for you as a human being. Because you're not a human being. You're a monster. A fucking monster. A low-life scumbag piece of shit monster. No better than a cockroach or a termite. If it were up to me and I was president, and you better hope to God I don't become president, I would have the U.S. Marshals, the Secret Service, the ATF, members of the military coming after you to arrest your asses. Make no mistake about it. I don't play fucking games. And the last thing I want to bring out is I want to know how many of you Democratic, Communist, Socialist, Marxist liberals out there are willing to pay for the funerals and burial expenses of all the people that's been murdered by these illegal criminal aliens that you're advocating coming across the border, unchecked, unvetted. How many? How many of you Democratic politicians out there, whether you're a state senator, congressman, or city council, or mayor, or county commissioner, how many funerals are you willing to pay for out of your own pocket? The funerals and burial expenses to these victims of murdered individuals that have been killed and murdered by these illegal aliens? How many burials and funeral expenses are you willing to pay for out of your own pocket? Or do we need to get a group going to file lawsuits against you personally, you city council members, you mayors, you governors, you state senators and congressmen of the Democratic Party, to pay for these funerals and burial expenses? I say we get some lawyers together and we start filing lawsuits against you city council members, you mayors, you governors, and senators and congressmen and state representatives of the Democratic Party. Personal lawsuits to pay for these funeral and burial expenses of these Americans that's been murdered by these illegal criminal aliens. Who's with me on that? Leave a comment below.